When I was first introduced to my fiancé's parents, I expected nerves, maybe a few tough questions, but instead, his mother shocked everyone by throwing an entire glass of wine in my face and sneering. "That's to disinfect a poor girl like you." The humiliation burned deeper than the sting of the alcohol, and in that moment I realized just how far she was willing to go to make me feel unwelcome. "Amanda, I thought I'd found the love of my life." I really did. But what happened next, what his mother said and did right there at the dinner table, it ripped open something I never expected, revealing a kind of cold, calculated cruelty that still sends shivers down my spine. And the twist? When my own fiancé laughed. "I'm Amanda. I'm 28, and 5 years ago, I built my tech company from absolutely nothing. It was brutal, but I poured my heart and soul into it. Last year, I met Ethan. He was 30, a financial analyst from a seriously wealthy family, and I fell head over heels. When he proposed, I was over the moon. It felt like my whole life was falling into place. Then I met his mother, Judith. The very first time. At dinner, of all places. She looked at me, this perfectly put-together woman, and then, without a shred of warning, she threw red wine in my face. Just like that. The liquid was cold, stinging, and it dripped down my brand-new dress. "That's to disinfect a poor girl," she said, her voice completely calm, utterly chilling. "Now pay $200,000 to marry my son." I was frozen. Stunned. And the absolute worst part? Ethan, my fiancé, he laughed. Just a little chuckle, but it was there. He laughed. Little did she know my company, the one I built with my blood and sweat, supplied crucial services to her corporation. So I just stood there, wine dripping from my face, a slow, cold smile spreading across my lips. "I'm canceling all business ties," I said. I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in Chicago. My parents were teachers, and they taught me the true meaning of hard work and determination. We weren't rich like Ethan's family, but we always had enough. I worked my way through college, scholarships and part-time jobs, and I graduated with degrees in computer science and business. 5 years ago, I launched my tech solutions company from my tiny apartment. That first year was absolutely brutal. We're talking 18-hour days, ramen noodles for dinner, and rejection. But I had developed this unique software platform that streamlined supply chain management for mid-sized companies, and slowly, clients started noticing. By year 3, we had 20 employees. By year 5, we'd expanded to 3 offices across the country, with over 100 staff members. I met Ethan at a financial technology conference in Boston. I was up there, presenting our latest software solution, and he approached me afterward. He had thoughtful questions about scalability. He was tall, with kind eyes and an easy smile. We exchanged business cards, and he called the very next day to ask me to dinner. Our connection was immediate, almost electric. He was intelligent, ambitious, and he genuinely seemed impressed by what I had built. Over the next year and a half, our relationship blossomed. Ethan was incredibly supportive of my career. He'd bring me coffee during late nights at the office. He celebrated every single company milestone with me. When he proposed 3 months ago with a vintage emerald ring, a family heirloom, I didn't hesitate. I said yes. It was only after our engagement that Ethan started mentioning his family more frequently. He described his father, Richard, as old school but fair, and his mother, Judith, as particular about certain things. When I pressed for details, he'd just shrug and say, "Mom's just traditional. She'll love you once she gets to know you." I should have paid more attention to those subtle warnings. The Walker family, I quickly learned, wasn't just wealthy. They were old money, with deep connections throughout the East Coast business world. Richard had inherited and expanded a manufacturing company that produced specialized components for the aerospace industry. Their social circle included senators, CEOs, even occasionally minor European royalty. Ironically, 6 months before our engagement, my company had secured a contract with Walker Industries. One of their divisions needed our software to modernize their inventory management system. The contract represented about 20% of our annual revenue, significant, yes, but not make or break. I had only dealt with their procurement team and IT department, never with the Walker family directly. As the dinner with Ethan's parents approached, I found myself increasingly nervous. I spent hours researching proper etiquette for dining with the upper class. I bought a new dress, conservative but elegant, navy blue with a modest neckline. I practiced small talk topics that seemed appropriate: art, travel, philanthropy. You're overthinking this, Amanda, Ethan said the evening before the dinner. Just be yourself. They'll see what I see in you. The day of the dinner, Ethan picked me up in his BMW. As we drove through increasingly exclusive neighborhoods, my stomach tightened into a knot. The Walker estate was at the end of a long, private drive lined with perfectly manicured trees. The house itself was a sprawling Georgian mansion with columns and immaculate gardens. You didn't tell me you grew up in a literal mansion, I whispered, a nervous laugh escaping me as we approached the front door. Ethan squeezed my hand. It's just a house. But it wasn't just a house. It was a statement. A monument to generational wealth, to privilege I had never, ever experienced. As the massive door swung open, I took a deep breath and stepped into Ethan's world. A uniformed housekeeper greeted us and took our coats. The foyer alone was larger than my entire apartment, with marble floors and a crystal chandelier that probably cost more than my car. Family portraits lined the walls, generations of Walkers looking down with the same confident expression Ethan often wore. Judith Walker appeared from a side room, elegant in a tailored black dress with a pearl necklace that gleamed against her skin. She was in her late 50s but looked younger, with Ethan's same hazel eyes and a practiced smile that didn't quite reach them. Ethan, darling, she said, air-kissing both his cheeks. Then she turned to me, her eyes sweeping from my hair to my shoes in a quick, dismissive assessment. And you must be Amanda. Her handshake was brief, her fingers barely touching mine. How lovely to finally meet you. Ethan has told us so little about you. The emphasis on little wasn't subtle. Before I could respond, Richard Walker entered. He was tall and distinguished, with silver hair. He offered a warmer greeting. Welcome to our home, Amanda. Ethan says you're quite the entrepreneur. Thank you, sir. It's a pleasure to meet you both. We moved to a formal sitting room where a staff member served champagne. I perched on the edge of an antique sofa, acutely aware of Judith's scrutiny. So, Amanda, Judith began, her voice smooth but piercing. Tell us about your family. What does your father do? My father was a high school history teacher. He's retired now. A teacher? She said it like someone might say. An exotic dancer. And your mother? Elementary school librarian. She passed away 3 years ago. I'm sorry to hear that, Richard said genuinely. Judith merely nodded. No family money then? No trust fund or inheritance? Mom, Ethan said, but his tone was more amused than reproachful. It's a reasonable question, darling. I'm just getting to know your friend. Fiancé, I corrected gently. And no trust fund. I built my company from the ground up. Yes, Ethan mentioned you have some sort of computer business. Tech solutions, actually. We develop specialized software for supply chain management. In fact, my company has been working with Walker Industries for the past 6 months. This news seemed to genuinely surprise Judith. Her eyes narrowed slightly. I wasn't aware of that. The new inventory system that's being implemented? That's our platform. I explained, relieved to move to more comfortable territory. I see. Well, I leave those details to our managers. The housekeeper announced dinner, and we moved to a formal dining room dominated by a mahogany table set with fine china and crystal. Each place setting had 3 forks, 2 spoons, and multiple glasses. I was so grateful for my etiquette research. As the first course was served, some kind of cold soup I didn't recognize, Judith continued her interrogation. Where did you attend school, Amanda? University of Illinois. I had a scholarship. Not Ivy League. She raised an eyebrow. The Walkers have attended Yale for 4 generations. Different paths to success, dear. Richard interjected. Amanda's company is quite innovative, from what I've heard. I smiled gratefully at him. Thank you. We're particularly proud of our new predictive analytics module that, Amanda. Judith interrupted, her voice sharp. You're using your dessert spoon for the soup. I wasn't, but I switched spoons anyway, feeling my face flush. Throughout the appetizer and main course, Judith found fault with everything. My posture, my voice, a bit loud for dinner conversation. Even the way I complimented their home. Grateful rather than observant. Each criticism was delivered with a tight smile, as if she were doing me a favor. When I attempted to discuss the successful partnership between our companies, Judith waved her hand dismissively. Business talk is so tedious at dinner. Tell me, Amanda, have you given any thought to children? The Walker line is quite important. We haven't discussed timing yet, I said carefully. I'd like to ensure my company is stable. Judith's face hardened. A mother's primary responsibility is to her children, not her hobby. My company isn't a hobby. We employ over 100 people. And 100 people dependent on you? She interrupted. How will you possibly manage that and properly raise Walker heirs? I looked to Ethan for support, but he was suddenly very interested in his roast beef. By the time dessert arrived, the tension was palpable. I had barely touched my food, my appetite destroyed by anxiety. Judith had moved on to questioning my lack of social connections, no country club membership, not even a charity board position. When I decided to make one last desperate attempt at civility, I said, Mrs. Walker, I understand you chair the hospital foundation. That's admirable work. For a moment she seemed almost pleased. Yes, philanthropy is a Walker tradition. Perhaps someday you might be equipped to participate. Actually, my company has a foundation that provides tech education for underprivileged youth. We've helped over 50 students attend college so far. How quaint. She took a sip of wine, then looked directly at me. Let's be frank, Amanda. You seem enterprising, but the Walker family has certain standards. Ethan holds a position in society that requires a suitable partner. I believe I am suitable, I said quietly, my voice barely a whisper. Do you? Without warning, she flung the contents of her wine glass directly into my face. The red liquid splashed across my cheeks and dripped onto my new dress. I gasped, too shocked to speak. That's to disinfect a poor girl, she said, completely calm. If you want to marry my son, you'll need to contribute a $200,000 dowry to the Walker Family Trust. Consider it an entrance fee. I sat frozen, wine dripping down my face, unable to believe what had just happened. Even more unbelievable was Ethan's reaction. He laughed. Actually laughed. Mom has her ways, he said with a chuckle, handing me his napkin. She did the same thing to my cousin's wife. Richard looked profoundly uncomfortable but remained silent. It's a family tradition, Judith explained, as if throwing wine at dinner guests was perfectly normal. The Walker family doesn't marry down without compensation. Your business may be successful now, but startups are notoriously unstable. The dowry ensures you're committed to the family, not just to Ethan's trust fund. I dabbed at my face, my hands shaking. I had no idea marriage required a purchase price. Everything valuable has a cost, Judith replied, a smug look on her face. If you truly love Ethan, this shouldn't be an issue. The remainder of the dinner passed in a blur. I barely spoke, mechanically eating tiny bites of dessert, while Judith discussed their upcoming vacation to the Maldives. Ethan acted as if nothing unusual had happened, chatting about golf and mutual friends I'd never heard of. As we prepared to leave, I made one last attempt to salvage something from the evening. Despite our challenging introduction, Mrs. Walker, I hope we can maintain a professional relationship. Your company's partnership is important to us. Judith patted my cheek condescendingly. Of course, dear. Business is business. The dowry is personal. I'll have my assistant send the account details for the transfer. I've never been so relieved to leave a house in my life. The car ride home was silent for what felt like an eternity. For 10 minutes, I stared out the window, still processing what had happened, waiting for Ethan to say something, anything, to acknowledge the humiliation I just endured. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. Are you going to say anything about what your mother did? Ethan sighed. I told you she was particular. Particular, Ethan? She threw wine in my face and demanded I pay to marry you. It's just how Mom is. She did the same thing to my sister-in-law, Jennifer, once. Once you pay the dowry, she'll warm up to you. I stared at him in disbelief. You think I'm going to pay $200,000 to join your family? It's not a big deal. You can afford it, with your company doing so well. That's not the point. It's degrading and archaic. And you laughed, Ethan. You laughed when she assaulted me. Assaulted? He rolled his eyes. Don't be so dramatic. It's a family tradition. If you want to be part of this family, you need to respect our ways. That night was our real argument. What disturbed me most wasn't Judith's behavior, it was Ethan's. He didn't defend me, didn't apologize for his mother, and seemed genuinely perplexed by my upset. When we reached my apartment, I told him I needed space to think. Don't overthink this, Amanda, he said, kissing my forehead. Just pay the dowry and we can move past it. I barely slept that night. I kept replaying the dinner in my mind, wondering if I had somehow misunderstood or overreacted. By morning I had almost convinced myself that perhaps this was just an unusual custom I wasn't familiar with, a test of some kind. Then my phone rang. It was Judith. Amanda, dear. I'm following up about our discussion last night. My assistant will send the wire transfer details today. We expect the dowry to be paid within 30 days, or we'll have to reconsider Ethan's engagement. She spoke as if we were discussing a routine business transaction, not the purchase of her son. Mrs. Walker, I'm not comfortable with also, she interrupted. I've scheduled a meeting with your team next week. There are some adjustments we'd like to make to the software implementation. Nothing major, just a few customizations. Before I could respond, she hung up. The meeting she referenced took place at my company's headquarters. Judith arrived with Walker Industries' CIO and 2 IT managers. For 2 hours, she was the model of professionalism. No mention of the dinner disaster, no personal comments at all. But the few customizations turned out to be major system overhauls that weren't in our contract and would cost thousands of extra development hours. When I tried to explain this, Judith smiled coldly. I'm sure you can accommodate us, given our personal connection. Ethan would be disappointed if his fiancé couldn't manage such a simple request. The threat was clear: pay the dowry and do the extra work, or lose both the relationship and the contract. That evening, Ethan called. Mom said the meeting went well. Did she mention she's asking for changes that would cost my company nearly $100,000 in uncompensated work? I'm sure she's just testing your commitment. He paused. Have you transferred the dowry yet? Ethan, we need to talk about this. It doesn't bother you that your mother is essentially holding our relationship hostage? Don't be so American about it, he said, his tone patronizing. In many cultures, dowries are normal. Just pay it, Amanda. For us. The next day, I met my best friend Stephanie for lunch and told her everything. That's insane, she said, eyes wide. You're not actually considering paying, are you? I don't know. I love Ethan, but this feels wrong. Stephanie frowned. You know my cousin works for that law firm that represents a lot of Boston elite, right? Let me ask her if she's heard of the Walkers doing this before. 2 days later, Stephanie called with disturbing news. The dowry tradition wasn't just for Ethan's sister-in-law. According to her cousin, the Walkers had demanded similar payments from multiple people who married into the family. More concerning, those who paid didn't suddenly become accepted. The demands just changed form. Ethan's last fiancé paid, Stephanie said. Then they demanded she quit her job because Walker women don't work. When she refused, Ethan broke it off. I felt sick. Why would he do this? Some families see marriage as a business transaction, not a love match. The Walkers clearly think their name has monetary value. I spent the next week researching the family's pattern through industry contacts and social media. I even connected with Ethan's ex-fiancée, Melissa. What she told me confirmed my worst fears. After I paid, she recounted, they controlled everything. Where we lived, who we socialized with, even when we would have children. When I resisted, Judith threatened to have my father's contracting business blacklisted. Ethan always sided with her. Meanwhile, the business relationship was deteriorating. Judith began calling daily with new demands and complaints. She criticized my staff in meetings, repeatedly mentioned that Walker Industries could find another vendor, and made implementation of our software increasingly difficult. The pressure from Ethan intensified as well. What started as gentle reminders about the dowry became daily texts and calls. Mom's getting impatient, Amanda. This is embarrassing for me. If you really loved me, this wouldn't be an issue. When I expressed concerns about his mother's business tactics, he dismissed them. You're being paranoid. Business and personal should be separate. But they weren't separate. Not for Judith. She was weaponizing the business relationship to force my compliance in personal matters. And slowly, agonizingly, I began to see that Ethan was completely complicit. 3 weeks after the disastrous dinner, I confronted Ethan directly. I need to know where your loyalty lies, I said, my voice trembling. With me, your future wife? Or with your mother? That's not fair, he protested. I love you, but I respect my family's traditions. Even when those traditions involve humiliating and extorting your fiancé? You're overreacting. It's just money, Amanda. You have it, why not pay? Because I won't be bought or sold. Marriage should be about love and partnership. His expression hardened. You Americans are so obsessed with romantic notions. Marriage has always been about family alliances and financial stability. My family is offering you social connections most people would kill for. At the price of my dignity. The argument escalated until Ethan stormed out. An hour later, my phone buzzed with a text. It wasn't from Ethan, but from an unknown number. The message contained screenshots of a conversation between Ethan and his mother. Mother, Ethan, she's still being difficult about the dowry. Ethan, keep pressuring her. The business contract gives us leverage. Mother, what if she still refuses? Ethan, then she's not Walker material. Remember your trust fund conditions. Mother, I'll bring her in line. She just needs to understand how things work. I felt physically ill. The man I loved, the man I thought respected me as an equal, had been conspiring with his mother all along. This wasn't just about a family tradition, it was about control. Later, I discovered the text had been sent by Richard's personal assistant, who had witnessed too many similar scenarios and felt compelled to warn me. 2 days later, Judith called with an invitation, or rather, a summons. We're having a family dinner this Saturday to discuss the situation. The entire family will be present. We expect you to attend with a decision about the dowry. The dinner was as intimidating as intended. Ethan's brother, William, and his wife, Jennifer, were there, along with his Uncle George and Aunt Patricia. All eyes were on me as Judith explained the situation. Amanda seems reluctant to honor our family traditions, she said. I thought it might help if she heard from others who have joined our family successfully. One by one, the in-laws spoke about their dowry experiences. Jennifer described it as an investment in my future. Ethan's Aunt Patricia called it the price of admission to a better life. His uncle's wife, Margaret, emphasized how it proved her commitment to the family values. Throughout their testimonials, I noticed something disturbing. None of them looked truly happy. Jennifer barely spoke unless prompted. Margaret deferred to her husband on every question. They seemed less like family members and more like employees, afraid to displease the boss. Then Richard spoke, surprising everyone. I paid a dowry, Amanda, when I married Judith. Her family required proof of my commitment. Judith looked annoyed at this revelation. That was different. Your family wasn't established. The principle is the same, Richard said, then fell silent under his wife's glare. Finally, Ethan took my hand. Amanda, we all want you to be part of this family, but traditions matter. It's time to decide. Are you in or out? The ultimatum hung in the air. Everyone waited for my answer. I need to use the restroom, I said, needing a moment to breathe. In the hallway, I checked my phone and found 3 urgent messages from Maria, my business partner. Amanda, we're having an emergency with Walker Industries. Judith called a meeting with our team this morning and threatened to terminate the contract over quality issues. She's telling other clients we're unreliable. We're already getting calls from Harrington Corp asking if we're stable. What's happening? My personal crisis had officially become a business crisis. Judith wasn't just threatening my relationship, she was attacking my company, my employees' livelihoods, everything I'd built. When I returned to the dining room, I could barely maintain my composure. The conversation had moved on to wedding plans for a wedding that would apparently only happen if I paid for the privilege. The country club is booked for June, Judith was saying. If Amanda confirms the dowry repayment this week, we can secure the date. And if I don't? I asked quietly. The room fell silent. Then there won't be a wedding, Ethan said firmly. I love you, Amanda, but this is non-negotiable. In that moment, looking at his face, so similar to his mother's in its expression and resolve, I finally saw the truth. Ethan had never respected me or my accomplishments. To him, I was an acquisition, not a partner. His love was conditional, based on my compliance with his family's demands. The devastation must have shown on my face, because Richard unexpectedly spoke up again. Perhaps we could reduce the amount, given Amanda's business success? The amount is traditional, Judith snapped. If anything, it should be higher given her background. I stood up. I need to go. Running away doesn't solve anything, Judith said dismissively. I'm not running. I'm leaving a situation that has become untenable. Ethan followed me to the door. Don't do this, Amanda. Think about what you're throwing away. I said. And I'm wondering what I ever saw in a man who would let his mother throw wine in my face and then demand I pay for the privilege. The next day brought more bad news. Another major client called to cancel their contract, citing concerns about our stability, concerns that had apparently originated from Judith Walker. My company's reputation, built over 5 years of hard work, was being systematically dismantled by a woman who saw me as nothing more than inadequate for her son. By the end of the week, we had lost 3 clients, and our stock was beginning to drop. My dream, my employees' livelihoods, everything was suddenly at risk. The crisis had reached its peak. I had to make a decision: pay the dowry to save my relationship and possibly my business, or take a stand and risk losing everything. That weekend, I went to my father's home in Chicago, needing distance from both Ethan and the business chaos. Dad listened to the whole story without interrupting, his expression growing increasingly concerned. "This isn't about money," he said finally. "It's about respect. If they don't respect you now, paying won't change that." "But my company, Dad. Everything I've built, it was built on your intelligence and determination, not on one client, even if it's a significant one." His confidence in me was the first step toward reclaiming my own. When I returned to Boston, I booked a meeting with Diana, my longtime mentor and former business professor. Over coffee, I laid out the entire situation. "You faced a predator," she said bluntly. "Judith identified your vulnerabilities, your love for her son and your business connection, and she's exploiting them. Classic power play. How do I fight back? She has more resources, more connections." Diana smiled. "But you have something she doesn't expect, the ability to surprise her. Predators don't expect prey to turn and fight." With Diana's guidance, I began developing a strategy. I reconnected with Taylor, a college friend who now worked for the Boston Business Journal. Without sharing details that would identify the Walkers, I discussed the general situation. "Unfortunately, it's not uncommon," Taylor said. "Old money families often use business ties as leverage in personal matters. It's rarely reported because the victims fear retaliation." "What if someone did report it?" Taylor raised an eyebrow. "It would make a compelling story about ethics and business relationships. Hypothetically speaking, of course." Next, I initiated a thorough investigation into Walker Industries' business practices. If Judith was willing to use her company as a weapon against me, I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with. I assigned my best analyst, James, to the task. 3 days later, James delivered his report. "There are some concerning patterns," he said. "Walker Industries has a history of abruptly terminating contracts with companies whose executives had personal conflicts with the family. There are also several instances of questionable accounting practices and potential labor violations." This wasn't just about me. The Walkers, particularly Judith, had a pattern of misusing their business power for personal vendettas. Meanwhile, I worked with our sales team to accelerate outreach to potential new clients. We focused particularly on Meridian Global and Frost Technologies, 2 competitors of Walker Industries who had previously expressed interest in our services. My CFO, Rachel, ran financial projections of life without the Walker contract. "It would hurt short term," she admitted. "We need to tighten expenses and possibly delay the new office opening, but with these new prospects, we could recover within 2 quarters. On Thursday, I called an emergency board meeting. Our 7 board members listened gravely as I explained the situation, the personal conflict with the Walkers, the business repercussions, and my proposed strategy. "I won't pretend this isn't serious," I concluded. "Walker Industries represents 20% of our current revenue. Losing them will impact us. But continuing this relationship means submitting to unethical demands and setting a dangerous precedent." To my immense relief, the board unanimously supported my decision to separate from Walker Industries. Harold, our chairman, put it best: "We didn't invest in this company to watch it become a puppet of old money bullies. We invested because you, Amanda, have integrity and vision." Throughout this period, Ethan continued his campaign to pressure me. His texts oscillated between romantic pleas and thinly veiled threats. "I miss you, can't we work this out? Mom says several of your clients are considering switching to Comtech." I could talk to her. "Don't throw away what we have over stubborn pride. The dowry isn't just about money, it's about proving you're not just after the Walker fortune." Each message clarified what I already knew: His loyalty would always be to his family and their twisted values, not to me or our relationship. The final piece of my strategy involved legal preparation. I met with our corporate counsel, Victoria, to review all contracts and communications with Walker Industries. They've actually given us grounds for a clean break, Victoria said, reviewing Judith's recent emails. These new demands constitute material changes to the original agreement. And these threats about damaging your reputation with other clients? That's tortious interference. If they tried to penalize you for ending the relationship, we have a solid case. By Friday, 1 week after the family dinner, I had my plan in place. I had documentation of all interactions, legal preparations for contract termination, preliminary agreements with 2 new clients, and the unwavering support of my team. That evening, I received a text from Ethan. Mom's patience is running out. Last chance to make this right. Dinner at her house tomorrow to finalize everything. Be there at 7. I texted back a single word. No. Instead, I sent a formal email to Judith requesting a meeting at my office on Monday morning. The subject line: Resolution of Business Relationship. Her reply came within minutes. I'll be there. Come prepared to discuss both business and personal matters. I was prepared, just not in the way she expected. Throughout the weekend, I rehearsed what I would say and how I would say it. I reviewed all documentation and confirmed our legal standing. I spoke with our major clients to reassure them of our stability. I even practiced power poses in front of my mirror, determined to project confidence even if I didn't fully feel it. Sunday night, Ethan came to my apartment unannounced. You're making a mistake, he said, his voice both pleading and condescending. Mom is willing to forgive your stubbornness if you come tomorrow with a dowry and an apology. I looked at the man I had thought I would marry and felt nothing but sadness for what could have been. I'll be there tomorrow, I said, but not for the reasons you think. As he left, I removed his engagement ring and placed it in an envelope. The emerald that had once symbolized our future now represented a bullet dodged. Monday morning arrived. I wore my most powerful outfit, a tailored black suit with subtle red accents. I was prepared to face Judith Walker on my terms, in my territory. The board had approved my decision, my team was behind me, my legal position was sound. For the first time since that wine had splashed across my face, I felt in control again. Judith Walker arrived at my office precisely at 9 a.m., dressed impeccably in a designer suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. She carried herself with the confidence of someone accustomed to getting her way. My assistant showed her into our main conference room, where I waited alone. I had deliberately chosen this setup. No lawyers, no team members. Just the 2 of us. This confrontation needed to be personal. Amanda, she said, taking a seat across from me. I'm pleased you've finally come to your senses. Ethan will be relieved. Thank you for coming, Mrs. Walker, I replied, keeping my tone professional. But I think you've misunderstood the purpose of this meeting. Her smile faltered slightly. Oh? I assumed we were finalizing the dowry arrangement and addressing those contract modifications. Actually, we're here to discuss the termination of our business relationship. The change in her expression was subtle but unmistakable, a flicker of surprise quickly masked by practiced composure. That would be unwise, she said. Walker Industries represents a significant portion of your company's revenue. And of course, there's Ethan to consider. I've considered everything very carefully, I said, opening the folder in front of me. In the past month, you've made numerous demands outside our contractual agreement, threatened my company's reputation with other clients, and attempted to use our business relationship to coerce me in personal matters. I slid several documents across the table, printouts of emails, meeting notes, and the text message exchange between her and Ethan. What I initially thought was just an unpleasant personal interaction has revealed itself as a pattern of unethical business conduct. Her eyes narrowed as she glanced at the evidence. You're making a grave mistake. No, Mrs. Walker. The mistake was thinking I needed to tolerate abuse to be successful. I've secured 2 new clients to replace Walker Industries' business, Meridian Global and Frost Technologies. The mention of her competitors visibly rattled her. They don't have our resources or influence. Perhaps not, but they value our services on their merits, not as leverage for personal agendas. I pulled out another document. This is our formal notice of contract termination, as permitted under Section 8.3 of our agreement. Your recent demands constitute material changes to the original terms. This is absurd. Our legal team will, Your legal team will advise you that fighting this would expose some concerning practices within Walker Industries. I placed another folder on the table. My team found several instances of questionable accounting, potential labor violations, and a pattern of contract terminations that could be construed as tortious interference. For the first time, Judith looked genuinely alarmed. You're investigating us? I'm protecting my company. Something I should have done sooner. I leaned forward. I'm not interested in damaging Walker Industries, Mrs. Walker. I simply want a clean break, both professionally and personally. At that moment, my assistant entered with a small package. Perfect timing, I said, taking it. This is for Ethan. I opened the package to reveal the engagement ring, now nestled in a corporate courier envelope. I'm returning this with the same level of dignity and respect you showed me at our dinner. Judith's face flushed with anger. You ungrateful, I'm not finished. I interrupted, my voice steady. I want to be absolutely clear. I'm not buying a husband, Mrs. Walker. I'm building a life. One based on mutual respect and genuine partnership, not financial transactions disguised as tradition. I stood up, signaling that the conversation was ending. Effective immediately, my company is terminating all contracts with Walker Industries. The transition documents are included in that folder, along with the contact information for our legal team should you have questions about the process. Judith also rose, her composure cracking. You won't get away with this. Do you have any idea who we are in this community? One word from me and doors will close for you everywhere. That might have worked in the past, I acknowledge, but times have changed. Bullying and threats leave paper trails now. And stories about powerful families using their businesses to settle personal scores make compelling headlines. You wouldn't dare. I'd prefer not to, I said honestly. This can end cleanly, Mrs. Walker. You go your way, I go mine. Or you can escalate, and we can see how today's business community responds to your methods. For a long moment, she stared at me, calculation visible in her eyes. Then she gathered her purse. Ethan deserves better than you, she said coldly. On that we agree. But for different reasons, I replied. Security will escort you out. As she reached the door, I added one more thing. Mrs. Walker, that $200,000 you wanted? I'm donating it to a scholarship fund for budding entrepreneurs. I thought you should know. After Judith left, I sat alone in the conference room, my hands trembling with the aftermath of adrenaline. I had done it. Stood up to her. Protected my company. And freed myself from a relationship that would have slowly crushed my spirit. The fallout was immediate, but manageable. Walker Industries issued a terse statement about differing business philosophies, and began transitioning to another vendor. Several society events suddenly lost my invitations. Ethan sent a final text calling me the biggest mistake of his life. But there were unexpected positives, too. That evening, I received a call from an unknown number. Amanda, this is Richard Walker. I braced myself for more threats or anger. I wanted to apologize, he said instead. What Judith did, what we all did, was inexcusable. I sat silent while you were humiliated, and I'm ashamed of that. His voice sounded different, older, but somehow more alive. Thank you for saying that, Mr. Walker. Richard, please. He paused. I've enabled Judith's behavior for years, watching her drive away good people who didn't meet her arbitrary standards. Seeing your courage today, it's given me some things to think about. 2 weeks later, Business News reported that Richard Walker had taken a leave of absence from Walker Industries to reassess priorities. Rumor had it he had moved out of the family mansion. The industry fallout I had feared never fully materialized. Yes, a few doors closed, companies with ties to the Walkers suddenly became unavailable. But for every closed door, 2 more opened. My stand against the Walkers had resonated with others who had experienced similar treatment, but lacked the means to fight back. 1 month after the confrontation, our contract with Meridian Global was officially signed, a larger deal than we'd ever had with Walker Industries. The press release included a quote from their CEO. We value partners who demonstrate integrity in both business practices and personal ethics. It was the sweetest victory of all. 6 months passed. My company not only survived the separation from Walker Industries but thrived. The loss of their business had forced us to diversify our client base, resulting in more stable revenue and less vulnerability to any single client's demands. We added 15 new clients, expanded to an office in Seattle, and launched a new product line that was already exceeding sales projections. The quarterly report showed a 22% increase in revenue compared to the previous year. The transition hadn't been entirely smooth. We had needed to delay some projects and tighten expenses temporarily. 2 employees had left, concerned about stability. But the core team had rallied around our values, working longer hours and bringing innovative solutions to new challenges. The business relationship with the Walkers was completely severed, but the personal fallout continued in unexpected ways. Ethan attempted to reconcile several times, his approaches evolving as his mother's influence apparently waned. His first attempt came via text. "Mom was wrong. I was wrong. Can we talk?" When I didn't respond, Flowers arrived at my office with a note. "I miss your strength and intelligence. Dinner without my family's involvement?" Finally, he showed up at my apartment one evening, looking disheveled and humbled. "I've been seeing a therapist," he said. "I'm starting to understand how dysfunctional my family's dynamics are." Part of me wanted to believe him. The connection we'd shared had been real, at least on my side. But his betrayal had cut too deep. "I'm glad you're getting help, Ethan," I told him. "But we can't go back. What if I've changed? What if I'm breaking free from her control? Then do it for yourself, not to win me back. Real change doesn't happen in a few months, and it doesn't happen to impress someone else." As he left, I felt a weight lifting, the final remnants of "what if, and maybe someday," that had lingered in my heart. More surprising was my developing friendship with Richard Walker. After leaving his wife, he had rented a modest apartment, and begun reconnecting with friends Judith had deemed unsuitable. We occasionally met for coffee, where he shared insights from his therapy and his deep regrets about enabling Judith's behavior for decades. "I thought protecting the Walker name meant preserving traditions," he said during one such meeting. "I never questioned whether those traditions deserved preservation." Through Richard, I learned that my stand had created ripples throughout their social circle. Jennifer, Ethan's sister-in-law, had begun attending business school, something Judith had previously forbidden. 2 other Walker-in-laws had renegotiated their roles in family businesses, demanding respect rather than continuing as silent partners. My company received unexpected recognition for ethical business practices. The Boston Business Journal, where my friend Taylor worked, published a feature on companies that maintained integrity despite pressure from larger entities. While the article never named the Walkers, the profile of my company emphasized our commitment to valuing partnership over power imbalances. This publicity led to speaking engagements at business schools and entrepreneurship conferences, where I shared lessons about maintaining ethical boundaries between personal and professional relationships. "Success built on compromise of core values isn't success," became my signature message. It's just a prettier version of failure. Perhaps the most healing development came 9 months after the confrontation. At a technology conference in San Francisco, I met Marcus, the founder of a cybersecurity firm.